The Phantom Troupe is widely considered the most powerful band of criminals in the Hunter x Hunter world. Confident enough to challenge the Mafia and powerful enough to take out an entire squad of Chimera Ants. In this hypothetical, the Phantom Troupe infiltrates the country of Iscor II to plunder the government for their hidden treasures, but actually come into contact with Neferpitou. The Royal Guard who was protecting the Royal Palace sensed a cluster of powerful auras and considered them a threat to the king. I do hypothetical Hunter x Hunter versus battles like this all the time, and do scaling videos for other series like One Punch Man and Jujutsu Kaisen as well. So if you're interested in that, then hey, subscribe. It's always greatly appreciated and helps me focus more time onto making content. At the time of the Chimera Ant arc, the Phantom Troupe's forces had been greatly diminished as Uvogin and Pakunoda died in York New. Hisoka had withdrawn from the troupe, and the only replacement so far had been Kaluto Zoldyck, who is admittedly weaker than even some of the lower tier troupe members. Chrollo had also only recently gotten his Nen abilities back, meaning there likely isn't any preparation time he could exploit. Realistically, he's going into this country expecting only to fight military forces and maybe a few Nen users. He wouldn't be expecting to fight a Royal Guard Chimera Ant. I know this might seem unfair to consider the troupe in this weakened version, however I'm trying to make this an actual fight that could happen in the real story, not some kind of mishmash hypothetical. In fairness, if the Phantom Troupe really did get that close to Meruem's palace, there's a strong possibility that Poof and Yuppie would come to Pitou's aid, so I consider losing Uvogin and especially Pakunoda a pretty fair trade-off. Pitou will be considered as she was at the end of the Chimera Ant arc with all her developed abilities. Basically, just imagine instead of Netero and Zeno falling from the sky, Pitou sensed the Nen of the troupe approaching the palace. If you're curious about a more no-nonsense every single Phantom Troupe versus all 3 Royal Guards, check out this video. It's pretty old, but I still consider it a pretty decent analysis. I'll briefly go over each troupe member and their general abilities. To get a better idea of their full capabilities, check out my ranking video on the troupe. Not to keep shilling myself, but of course I do have to keep things pretty brief for a versus video. Cortopi is ranked dead last in raw strength among the troupe, and his ability Gallery Fake, which creates copies of whatever he touches, doesn't have much benefit in a fight outside of prep perhaps. He was kind of standing on the business in front of Feitan and Finks in York New, but even Feitan seemed to kind of laugh this off. Kaluto is a Zoldyck with years of assassination training and with the ability to manipulate paper. This ability, Dance of the Serpent Bite, had enough power to rip a Chimera Ant officer into pieces, but he still lacked confidence when comparing himself to the other members nearby. Shizuku is ranked rather low in terms of physical strength, but when using her vacuum called Blinky, could punch holes into the skin of Pike. Her vacuum can suck any non-living material, as seen when she drained Pike's blood from the many holes she made on his skin. Causing this amount of damage to officer class ants is actually pretty impressive, seeing as Ramot, Barrow, and Centipede all pushed Gon to get pretty serious before they even had Nen, even surviving a full power John Kent from him after his intense training in Greed Island. Shalnark supposedly has even more raw strength than Shizuku, but he admits he can't even deal with a Chimera Ant peon in an altercation, and resorts to his manipulation Nen ability. This is notable as peons are even lower than the officer ants like Ramot or Pike, but also haven't even learned a Nen. Melioran tells Gon that a squadron leader like Zazan could kill peons with one punch, putting Shalnark's physical capabilities far below that of squadron leaders. Once his manipulation ability Black Voice failed to work due to another Chimera Ant manipulating Pell, he uses his autopilot ability, which makes him powerful enough to destroy both Pell and Boku. When witnessing this, Boku can't believe the amount of aura Shalnark had. However, it's questionable how much he actually knows about aura, as the squadron leaders only recently learned Nen. He was probably never seen them in combat. We also don't know if he ever sensed Pitou's aura in combat either, so it's hard to say. It's safe to say he's above Kaluto, and that's about it. Nobunaga is part of the troupe's combat squad alongside Finks and Feitan, and was originally partnered with Uvogin, someone stated to be almost unbeatable in a one-on-one fight. Chrollo stated that Nobunaga's duty in the troupe was to put his life on the line to protect support members like Shizuku, meaning at the very least he should be able to dice up officer class ants such as Pike with relative ease. On top of that, Nobunaga is an Aido master, extending his aura to the range of his blade and instantly cutting down any opponent who enters his end. It's stated in the Hunter Encyclopedia he is the best fighter in the troop, at least in terms of combat skills like martial arts and swordsmanship. Franklin and Machi are unfortunately pretty featless, but are at least confident in how they stack up to other troop members. Machi, who thought she'd at least escape from Feitan and Finks if things went south at the end of York New, and Franklin, who had no qualms about fighting Nobunaga. Therefore, I think it's at least fair to put them around the same level as Nobunaga, but not quite as skilled, as he literally is the most skilled troop member. They are also confident in potentially fighting Hisoka, who they all know is a very capable fighter as well. Machi's Nen threads give her added versatility, able to subdue opponents or heal her wounded allies as seen in Hisoka. Bonolenov and Finks both deal with their Chimera Ant opponents with relative ease, defeating each one in one blow once they use their heavy hitting attacks, Battle Cantabile Jupiter and Ripper Cyclotron. It should be noted, however, that Bonolenov's first attack, a Spear Nen ability, did no damage to his opponent, and Finks' Nen-enhanced punch was compared to a mosquito bite by the gorilla Chimera Ant he fought. After witnessing Zazan fight Feitan, they are both confident they'd be able to defeat her, even after watching her transform and getting the immense durability to take Feitan's full power sword strike. While this could just be overconfidence, we will give them the benefit of the doubt and place them on squadron leader level, or maybe a little bit higher. Finks is considered a very adept combatant in hand-to-hand with a strong balance of offense and defense, while Bonolenov has the special ability to change his form of those he's met before, and, make annoying noises. Okay. Feitan is the last member of the troop's combat team, and he was able to fight Zazan in her base form while being out of shape. After beating all their opponents, the other troop members like Shalnark and Finks thought Zazan actually looked pretty strong, implying Zazan was more powerful than her ant soldiers. Despite that, Feitan can keep up with and even overpower Zazan with nothing but his base physical abilities and Nen reinforcement. This automatically puts him in a higher echelon than those listed before, seeing as they needed their Nen abilities. After her transformation, Feitan could do nothing against her extreme level of durability, and instead activated his Pain Packer ability and created a Rising Sun, a fireball that cooked Zazan to a crisp and made all the other troop members run away or risk annihilation. This particular Pain Packer was on the weaker side according to Feitan himself, on top of him being rusty, yet he still has the best feats out of every Phantom Troupe member listed so far. Chrollo is the leader of the Phantom Troupe and the strongest member, at least according to the guidebook. He's capable of fending off two Zoldyck assassins at the same time using nothing but basic Nen enhancement, his own innate skill, and an oversized washcloth, with both Zoldicks doing everything in their power to take Chrollo down, even ready to lay down their lives. This is the same Zeno and Silva Zoldyck that thought Chimera Ant squadron leaders like Pitou were a waste of time and crush his head with one punch. He's considered to be Hisoka's ultimate opponent, even more powerful than Killua, Illumi, the Zoldicks, the rest of the Phantom Troupe, and many more powerful characters. In the Yu Yu Hakusho official character book, Hunter x Hunter section, Chrollo is listed as having greater combat abilities than most squadron leader Chimera Ants like Pitou and Zazan. All this paints a pretty consistent picture that Chrollo is a very high tier combatant and should be considered above squadron leader level. He also wields an arsenal of Nen abilities thanks to Skill Hunter. While he's not as stacked as he was when he fought Hisoka, as that fight saw him prep for a long time, he still has quite the kit. Teleportation, trapping opponents within Fun Cloth, a poisonous Ben's knife that can paralyze a whale, that combined with his top tier intelligence and planning, make Chrollo a force to be reckoned with. Neferpitou, the first Royal Guard, had an oppressive presence the moment they were born. Officer and leader class ants considered the royals akin to a higher life form that they couldn't even be compared to. Pitou is immediately introduced power-wise by annihilating Kite with little effort, seemingly only taking a small cut to the cheek before decapitating the hunter. In the following volume, it is said, encountering their most formidable foe yet, Gon and Killua barely escape with their lives. Most formidable foe is a very important statement, because that means Pitou, before they even learned any Nen abilities, was more powerful than every other enemy in the series so far. After seeing the full power of Isaac Netero, Colt still believed the chairman would lose to the Royal Guards. This doesn't mean Netero would lose, as obviously Netero's main weapon is his speed and the Gonyin Bodhisattva, but having more aura than Netero is more impressive than you might think. In a recent exposition, we learn more about Nen, and we actually get a gauge for how good certain characters are at using Nen. In it, we learn that Netero is a level ultimate enhancer, while Uvogin, the physically strongest member of the troupe, is one level lower. Usually, being more skilled in Nen doesn't automatically make you stronger. For example, this same chart shows Cortopi above Shizuku and Knuckle. That doesn't mean Cortopi is stronger than those two or anything. However, enhancement Nen is literally just how good you are at strengthening your body. If Netero is better at using enhancement techniques than Uvogin, that means he should simply be more powerful than every single Phantom Troupe member. And by extension, so would Pitou. Pitou isn't just strong, but a glutton for punishment. A direct hit from Netero's Guanyin Bodhisattva did pretty much no damage, and they took a tail slap from meruem with intent to kill. The same tail slap that blew the heads of leader class Chimera Ants into non-existence. Even Silva Zoldyck only managed to cave Chitou's head in, whereas meruem's attacks pretty much just erased them. Pitou is also a genius and a master of Nen, learning top tier Nen abilities in a matter of days. While Dr. Blythe won't be of much help in this scenario as it requires Pitou to lower their Nen defenses, Pitou has a variety of different manipulation abilities which she uses to control corpses like puppets. When going into battle mode, Pitou uses Terpsichora, which controls her own body like a puppet and enhances her physical abilities beyond its limit. Even her basic applications of Nen are god tier, displaying the most impressive use of N we've seen in the series that stretches to 2 kilometers, dwarfing even Zeno Zoldyck's feat of 300 meters. On that note, I think it's pretty safe to say that in terms of one-on-ones, Pitou has every member of the Phantom Troupe utterly outclassed. Being physically stronger than Uvogin and being Gon's strongest enemy so far, which includes most of the Phantom Troupe, is enough to say Pitou is on a higher level, as well as the fact that most of the Phantom Troupe struggled with leader or even officer ants and needed to use their Nen abilities to defeat them. The fact Fink's normal punches couldn't even scratch a normal Chimera Ant officer means he would do even worse against Pitou, and Bonolenov's whose spear only knocks down a soldier ant would fare about the same. Feitan is a bit better, but even he really caps at trading blows with squadron leader ants, squadron leaders who admit Pitou is on another level. And he still thought base Zazan's skin was very difficult to break through, even before she transformed. Yes, he was rusty, but being rusty doesn't automatically mean you're nothing compared to your prime. We need feats to say Prime Feitan could fight someone on the level of Pitou. Chrollo might be able to put up some kind of fight on account of being relative to Zeno Zoldyck. After Pitou and Zeno sensed each other's powers, Pitou grew immensely excited for combat, and Netero thought Zeno would be helpful during the mission. It should be noted that Zeno's mission was not assassinating Royal Guards, but get the Royal Guards away from the king, which is why he launched Dragon Dive to cause confusion and large-scale destruction. While he might be able to put up a decent fight, good enough to keep Pitou distracted, it doesn't actually mean that Zeno or Chrollo are equal or stronger than any Royal Guard. You might be saying, but wasn't Kite able to draw blood from Pitou? Kite isn't as strong as Chrollo or Feitan, so surely they'd be able to do the same. Kite's ability Crazy Slots conjures different weapons based entirely on luck, and every time we see him use this in the series, he considered it bad luck. We don't exactly know what kind of weapons Kite got to use in his final battle, but Jing does imply Kite has some sort of near-death special weapon, which is impossible to say Chrollo is stronger than. It's entirely possible that near-death Nen Amp Kite is just that powerful. Even then though, people often forget that Pitou was only using Kite to test their own abilities and might have taken their time and played with Kite, purposely letting him land attacks that she otherwise could have dodged. In fact, we know that Pitou was holding back here, at least in terms of speed, since it's confirmed later that Pitou could have jumped twice as fast as she did when she ripped Kite's arm off. And this is still Pitou before learning anything about Nen. Of course, the true members do have other abilities that amplify them beyond their base skills. I just wanted to get this out of the way to establish that the weaker members aren't bringing much to the table. Fink's Ripper Cyclotron has shown no known upper limit, but he himself admitted he needed about 7 to 8 spins of his arms just to deal with an officer Chimera Ant, and his ability has a charge-up time. Pitou, who has a 6th sense to detect major threats, as seen with Gon, wouldn't get caught off guard and would just decapitate Finks immediately after charging Ripper Cyclotron. We have no idea how much he'd need to spin his arm to hurt a Royal Guard, but keep in mind, Gon needed to sacrifice his entire life and Nen in order to achieve power to surpass Pitou. Feitan's Pain Packer transforms the damage he takes into pain, meaning, just like Finks, it relies on other conditions and has a bit of a charge-up time. Pitou would most likely decapitate Feitan in all honesty, or with her speed to jump kilometers in seconds, could easily just escape the effective range of Pain Packer and let Rising Sun fizzle out without it doing anything. Remember, for Pain Packer to work, Feitan needs to take damage without dying. Machi is an adept healer who can attach missing arms if Pitou ever rips them off, as she did with Kite, but her ability to restrain opponents is somewhat limited, as it's explained her threads at max strength can only support about 1 ton of weight, something base Killua could do with ease. Pitou would likely rip out of the restraints with ease. Shellnark's manipulation ability couldn't even pierce the shell of a Chimera Ant peon, the lowest class of Chimera Ant that would get one-shot by leaders. It wouldn't even get through Pitou's Nen defenses that blocked a smack from the above Uvogin level Chairman Netero, or her naturally enhanced durability. It would be like Feitan versus transformed Zazan all over again. Autopilot at best puts him above base Zazan for shocking one of her soldiers, but we have no reason to believe it would ever pose a threat to Pitou. The other members like Franklin and Nobunaga are more or less very skilled brawlers, but don't have anything that could handle Pitou's absurd physical power and durability. No amount of swordsmanship can overcome that gap in raw strength. Now, I know it might seem like I'm trashing on the troop quite a bit, however I do think there are ways they could win, and they mainly revolve around Chrollo, Bonolenov, and Shizuku, funny enough. That does depend on how quickly Chrollo manages to formulate a plan and how well the troop can coordinate with one another, so keep in mind I'm not so sure how well this would work in reality. Strange as it sounds, Bonolenov's weird, annoying whistling sound might have a more intense effect on Pitou, whose feline biology bestowed her enhanced hearing. If this slows down Pitou or causes them to be distracted, it leaves her open to attack and might allow other troop members, namely Finks, to launch their main attacks. If we take Kite cutting Pitou's cheek at face value, ignore the context, and her taking a Guanyin slap, I think it's very reasonable to say they could at least hurt Pitou a bit. From there, Shizuku can use her vacuum to suck Pitou's blood away, while the rest of the members basically act as meat shields to slow her down. That, or Chrollo uses the Fun Cloth and traps the dazed Pitou while she's distracted by other members. Maybe even uses his teleportation to throw her off even more. There's a lot of different ways it could go just due to how many members there are. This sounds like a great plan, but relies heavily on the troop basically instantly working together and coordinating, something we know they don't do based on Uvogin and Feitan. It also assumes that several key troop members, Chrollo, Bonolenov, and Shizuku and Finks, aren't taken out before they can start this strategy, or that some of them aren't paralyzed when Pitou unleashes her ominous aura, which caused many powerful and veteran hunters to freeze in shock and fear. While the Phantom Troupe are ruthless fighters, Pitou's Nen was even more evil than Hisoka or Illumi. There's also the simple fact that Bonolenov's whistling will affect the troop as well. There's just too much benefit of the doubt you need to give the troop to consider this a valid plan. Pitou, on the other hand, doesn't really need a plan. She's powerful enough to rip apart every member of the troop with her bare hands, and tanky enough that most of their attacks won't even faze her. Yes, she is fighting the entire Phantom Troupe, but team busting is not foreign for Royal Guards. Over the course of the Palace invasion, Youpi fought off a team of Knuckle, Shoot, Killua, and Morel, and while he didn't exactly kill them, pretty much all of them would have died if not for Melioron camouflaging them or Nav's last-minute arrival to bring everyone to the hospital. At the climax of the battle, when Knuckle deactivated Hakaware, APR had only built up about half of Youpi's overall aura, and their only strategy was to run away until it collected all his aura and sealed his Nen away, meaning they were never actually close to beating Youpi in a direct confrontation. The only damage Youpi even took was one missing eyeball from Shoot and a couple zaps from Killua. Pitou is confirmed in the manga and in both databooks to be the most powerful Royal Guard. stated to hold power second only to Meruem himself and the most powerful soldier of the king. This is supported later as well, as Hidalgo believes that even with all the remaining hunters there, Pitou would annihilate all of them. And keep in mind, the hunters came in with a plan and over a week of preparation and knowledge on their enemies. While for the Phantom Troupe, this is a totally random encounter against an unknown adversary. The main strategy the hunters used to beat Yuppie was Knuckles' Hakoware, installing Yuppie until he ran out of aura, but that's something the Phantom Troupe can't do. They have no choice but to fight Pitou to the absolute end, and they don't have any abilities to counter raw overwhelming strength except those I already mentioned. Something else to consider, one of Pitou's main abilities is manipulating corpses as puppets. We don't know the exact conditions of how this ability works, but if we assume it has a little setup, then Pitou might just be able to control each troop member as she defeats them, making her own small army of elite Nen users to help her win the battle. In conclusion, while there are ways the spiders could emerge victorious, I think the Royal Guard would win most of the time, being far stronger than Uvogin in raw power and boasting top-tier Nen abilities and intelligence, and the durability to tank attacks from the strongest hunter on the planet, make it pretty hard to say the Phantom Troupe could win a fight with a serious Neferpitou. She has the feats and scaling to say she could take on teams of elite Nen users like Morel and Knuckle while barely breaking a sweat, and could potentially turn fallen spiders against their allies. Despite their best efforts, the Phantom Troupe would fall prey to the strongest Royal Guard.